Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Two World Podcast. It is my distinct honor to introduce the co-hosts of the podcast. My name is Ken, and I'm privileged to be a guest this morning on this podcast, which is hosted by Barney.
Hello.
And Jacob.
Well, we're back with another conversation about a show close to our hearts called Northern Exposure. Barney selected a unique episode for us this morning. So we will get into that and hope you enjoy it. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, after the last episode that we did, where Shelley was the one that was helping Holling work through some of his issues. And then we even, I guess really a theme that from the last episode was really helping one another and kind of pulling each other through. Even Maurice, who is usually kind of a grumpy, stingy, kind of aloof character, was really doing his best to help Fleischman through his feeling of isolation, driving him out to Velichesk to hopefully find some other Jewish people in the area, but just finding a ghost town instead. And but even kind of still trying to buck Joel up a little bit by saying, here are all these mountains that have been named after Jewish people who were explorers in the area. After that experience, today's episode came to mind as kind of a flip of Holling and Chris helping Shelley out through a problem that she's having. And then when I was trying to find the title of the episode, I realized the other real big point of the other real plot line in the story, which is Joel going through a breakup and trying to recover from that. And in the first season, I think near the end, Elaine, Joel's girlfriend, comes to visit, and Joel is very worried about how Maggie will treat Elaine. And we kind of sense maybe that Joel is also kind of projecting his feelings for Maggie onto the situation and kind of like making things out, kind of blaming Maggie in a way for these feelings, these confused feelings that he has inside, and then at the same time trying to concentrate on his girlfriend, on Elaine being there. And then at the start of this episode, which is the start of the season 2, he gets this Dear Joel letter and find out that he has been dumped. And it's quite a way to start. It's right at the beginning of the episode. It's quite a way to get things started off. And I'm curious, Jacob, how did you're only a few episodes deep into your experience with Northern Exposure, and even it starts off with Chris kind of giving us just a little prologue to the episode, kind of getting things laid out, and then we have Joel and Maggie kind of added a little bit, kind of nipping at each other in his office. Then you didn't know what to expect at all. How did you feel when this scene kind of unfolded?
I was surprised because I didn't know much about Joel's background and that he had a girlfriend outside of Sicily. And so, yes, having that storyline introduced, that added another dimension to his character. All throughout the episode, I kept trying to think of what connects Joel's experience with the other parts of the story and the other main storyline. It was like a big puzzle for me. And then as we went into it deeper, it started to, especially as was referenced earlier, the movie theater scene. Or maybe we talked about that actually before we started recording the podcast. I'm not sure, but anyway, there is this movie theater scene where a younger version of Joel is talking to the current version of Joel and revealing something deep about his own psychology. And so To answer your question succinctly, I was very surprised, but I'm so grateful that they unpacked more of Joel's own kind of deep emotional state throughout the episode. And then that kind of unlocked for me what the connection was for the broader episode. So, which I'm really excited to talk about. Yeah. How about for you, Ken? I'm
Well,
sure you've seen this one before, but
right. And continued rejections then as he wants to jump back into the pond. I think those words were used or something similar. And, we see that it just doesn't work that way, even though back in New York or whatever Joel's previous experiences taught him that it may have been okay to presumably think your presence is enough to attract, the co-eds in the bar, or just not going to work. Just not going to work, Joel. And it's all part of, and Jacob, I would think you've probably seen this now, all part of Joel's development as a person now who is learning to become more fully human.
I like how we see him kind of going through the typical stages and process of dealing with a broken relationship, and I think we catch also in the movie theater scene, we catch where his younger self is telling him that he's getting closer to 30. So we have to kind of remember he's really just out of medical school. Doesn't have a lot of life experience under his belt since he's been in school for such a long time. And he has this typical kind of immature approach that probably all of us has shared this experience in our lives where, exactly like what Ken was saying, he's like, if I were in New York, look at me, I'm a doctor, I'm Jewish, I'd be fighting him off with a stick. And then, later in the bar, he uses the line, he's like, that was the biggest mistake she'll ever make. He's using all of these typical kind of lines that we would use to reassure ourselves after this big rejection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, it seems like Joel's younger self too names one of the fundamental problems for Joel is that he's looking for external affirmation. And I think, it's like a core deep longing he has for other people to see him and recognize him and affirm him. And I mean, a lot of us can relate to that, right? But he's kind of stuck and unable to find grounding when he is rejected. And since he can only seem to find grounding in external people, he doesn't know what to do when the people around him aren't able to give him the type of affirmation he's looking for. They try, and I feel like during the episode, he starts to grow, but he also recognizes that they're trying to help him, which I think comforts him. The really interesting scene sitting outside with the iced coffee, with talking with Maggie, and it's an imagined conversation of trying to get closure with the girlfriend who's just dumped him. And it certainly doesn't go probably how Joel would want an imagined conversation to go, but the fact that they were trying to help him, I think, does lift him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Please.
Sorry. I like how we kind of see him, at the very beginning, we're thinking, he's this typical guy, he's just really, there's not a lot of growth here, not a lot of depth. We've got to kind of give him, the benefit of the doubt because he's new to life and these experiences. Then we see when he hits rock bottom, when he's in bed and Ed comes in and he doesn't even, come up with his usual quip of, well, don't knock, Ed, come right in, and he's, Ed is worried about him. And I think in a lot of the episodes we've had so far, Ed is worried about people. And I loved that kind of analogy that Joel had to help Ed understand what closure is. And since Ed loves movies, he's like, what would happen if you're watching this movie, exciting movie that I forget what it was, but I want to see it. I've never seen it. And then he's like, and then whammo, they just cut it off. You don't get to see the last 15 minutes, and it clicks for Ed what closure is. And then he, in this way that he loves to try and help people, he goes to, of all people, Holling and Maggie, and tell them, he makes a wonderful point. If they hadn't made Joel go to Alaska, he probably would have stayed with Elaine. But it was the distance and everything else that, they realized it's not going to work. And Elaine was living her life in a big city and meeting people, and Joel stuck in Alaska. And amazingly, Maggie of all people does, she wears these, it's freezing cold. She wears, a spaghetti strap dress with spaghetti straps. And obviously she's cold, and she's really going out of her way to help this guy that she feels indifferent for, it, that we saw at the very beginning of the episode, where she's like, if, she's giving him all this advice on how to acclimate. And, there's this, tension that they have, and then she's going out of her way to help him find this closure. Right. And it's at that time, from that point on, we really see a lot of interesting development in him as a person and a part of the community.
Yeah, clearly Joel has nowhere to go at this point. It's not like we can go downstairs from the apartment and head up to Sardi's for dinner. And Ed's perceptiveness to that cause was really to be admired, and Maggie for going the extra 10 yards. And then the comedic twist in the midst of their conversation was a bit of a relief. And yeah, just well done. Well done. Well, should we move on to Shelley's dilemma?
I had one question. This time
okay.
I didn't prepare a question. I didn't send questions beforehand, but kind of branching out from the episode into real life. I've been thinking about this a lot, just thinking about this episode, thinking about relationships I've had, and thinking about, one day kind of hopefully being able to shepherd and mentor along my two sons in the potential, relationships that they have. And I'm curious, maybe what relationship advice do you think you might give your younger self, or will you want to give to your kids, or maybe you are, even in Jacob's case, are giving to your kids as they're getting to the age where they want to start seeing other people, or are seeing other people?
I feel like I should defer to you, Ken, because you have more life experience than I do. So maybe you could start.
And more failures.
No.
Well, I can remember one distinct moment in my daughter's growing up process. And in a sense, there's a bit of Joel Fleischman there. She was with a guy from the end of high school right through the first 3 years of her undergraduate work at Tiffin. And I was working at the county park system up in another county, and we had booked the reception building through the parks. And it was just one of those things where it was, okay, it'll be, there'll be the wedding. This is a given, and then the reception, and then they'll go on, and he'll be the pharmacist, and she'll be the forensic psychologist, and their lives will continue. Bum, 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 bum. And then one evening, I get a call from my daughter, and she says, "Dad, I just don't think this is going to be a right thing for either of us." And a long conversation ensued, and it was mostly me just listening and occasionally saying, yes, ultimately, it's a decision about marrying a friend and being a friend and having that loving, intimate relationship that's going to provide some happiness. And because I'll admit, I love the guy, but I wasn't going to share my life with the guy. And, there were sides in that relationship that obviously I was not cognizant of. And so I admired at that time, her courage to say, I think I'm going to go up to Toledo this weekend and give him back his ring, because so there was that.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, Ken. It seems like she was trying to be authentic and real and recognize who she was and who he was, and try to be honest about that and not try to shoehorn their relationship into something that she thought it couldn't be. My advice would be, and it's very simple, is to try as hard as you can to love the other person for who they are, not who you want them to be. Because we all have capacity to change. And when we're in a relationship, we want to please our spouse or our partner. And ideally we can compromise and find middle ground. Or if something's really important to them, to do it their way. And if something's really important to us, that we communicate well enough and clearly enough that they might, in some cases, give us that license. But I also feel there are times when, due to pattern, family culture, how the person was raised, that they're going to come back to certain default behaviors, positions, attitudes, ideas that we just need to accept and not hold on to the wanting to control that or change them. And so, and I think that at the end of the day, that's kind of too what most people want, is they want to be loved and accepted as they are, not for as some other version of that they could be when they're on their best, having their best day. So
I'm curious, Jacob, have you had a conversation like that yet with either of your two older children? I wish I had had those words for my daughter as she was in her formative years. I don't think I had those words.
Yes. We've had the conversations like that. Our oldest son has dated someone, and we tried really hard to encourage him, because we really had a sense of trust in his capacity to be a good judge of character, and we felt like the person that he was dating, they had been friends for a long time before they started dating. So we tried to support him, but we would share words of, encouragement, but also from time to time instruction, like, oh, just be yourself and make sure to communicate well, and try to listen to her well and see, encounter her where she is. Our middle child has had some friendships before where she was hurt at how her friends were treating her, and it was a pattern. And I know it's a little bit different than a dating relationship, but we told her in those cases, we really encouraged her to maybe think about boundaries. Sometimes if there's an unhealthy pattern, accepting somebody else for who they are doesn't mean that then you will accept patterns of behavior that are hurtful towards you. When it gets to a situation where there's like belittling or behavior that makes you feel really badly about yourself. I come back to these words my grandfather shared with me when I was young. He said, Jacob, friendships are like elevators. They either take you up or they take you down. And ever since he said that, those words have stuck with me. And like when I get into a situation where I have a friendship that consistently, when I spend time with the person, I feel badly about myself afterwards. So we share that with our middle child. And we've started talking with our youngest about that too, like how people treat you matters, and how they listen to you, and do they let you be who you are, or do they try to, only accept you when you do certain things that make them feel good. Or so, yeah, to answer your question, we have talked with our kids. Those are some of the things that we've said. But I might turn it over to you, Barney. Have you had a chance to do some of that with your own sons?
um, not exactly. I guess maybe in terms of friendships, I always just encourage um, Yuma to just to be outgoing and to think of more have being friends with more people than just than mainly just here at home. um, and it's fun to see him kind of branch out a bit and be friends with our neighbors um, and really just enjoy playing with them and spending time with them. He's still so young that and they're young that it's he can be friends with everybody. But thinking about like relationship advice, um, think about today's episode and also thinking about the lovely birds that sometimes we hear from Ken's area where he is. It makes me think probably the advice I'll end up giving is, the times where you try to make yourself look too, where you try to sing your song too loudly and like you kind of, instead of kind of tagging along, building on what Jacob was saying, instead of in addition to accepting the person for who they are, make sure that you're being your genuine self too, and not trying to make yourself look too big, not trying to, add all of these qualities that you wish that you had to say or try to portray that you have these qualities, even if it's not part of your real genuine character. I think what we kind of saw Joel doing, and probably what we've done ourselves, is we think what the other person wants in a relationship or in a partner, and we try to be that beforehand, instead of saving so much headache and just being who we are, and thinking, well, okay, that's who I am isn't what that person is looking for. That's fine, in so many words. And one day I'll find two or three or one or however many people who really are into who I am. And hopefully I can convey that. It's easier to say than to do, but hopefully I can convey that to my kids too.
A few episodes ago, we were able to interview Lee Matzos about his music and his journey of recovery from grief. And in one of his songs, he has this line that really resonates with what you're saying, Barney. He says, "Your power in this moment is to make the choice that makes you really you." And it's like we can't truly fabricate a version of ourselves that could do any better or contribute more than offering what we naturally can give. I mean, that and the gift of ourself, like as we are, is the healthiest approach. Yeah, and that's a really good word, Barney. Does it feel like a good segue to thinking about Shelley's story? And I was so fascinated by trying to get behind what is the psychology that's going on with her. And so, I mean, obviously she has a deep need, something core that this TV watching, that she, as our listeners may learn as we talk about this further, or if they've seen the show, that through the gift of a large satellite dish, she was able to see all of these huge varieties of shows from around the world, and then really becomes addicted to watching. And as she's doing it, keep thinking, like, what is driving this? Like, what need is she trying to fill? So I was wondering, could we talk about that a little bit? And I don't know if you need to give more context to her story. If so, please feel free to unpack it more.
I think you pretty well hit it. Holling gifts her because she was disconnected with the world at large, and his thinking was that this would give her the opportunity to see in part how the rest of the world is operating at this particular time in history, and then it goes haywire from there.
Yeah, it's funny that I kind of forgot. I kind of forgot what the impetus for giving the satellite dish was. I knew that like she really liked like TV and whatnot, but I was putting the cart before the horse. It was funny that Holling explains that he's like, you always said that you wanted to see the world, and here we can see the world with 200 channels. Right from the comfort of our own home. And yeah, I think that initially it caught me off guard what it ended up doing to Shelley. I didn't realize that, the first few times I saw it, the first time I saw it, I didn't realize that that would be the way that the episode would go. But like we kind of see her getting addicted to the TV. And yeah, and she doesn't sleep, and then she spends their honeymoon money on the home shopping channel. But I especially love, for comedically, I love the part where like the scene starts with them watching TV, and we're like, what's going on this program that they're watching? Where is this? And is it in Chinese? And then Holling goes, here we are watching this Italian documentary, about this documentary about people in Italy, in Chinese. Or is it a documentary about China from Italy? So I forget how it goes. And this is an era also in the world in technology where really satellite dishes could pick up anything, any kind of TV channel. And it's just so curious. And then there's another part that is so telling, where Maurice and Ed are talking, and Ed says that he can't go over to Maurice's despite the tempting offer of T-bones, and says, he wants to watch rugby. And Maurice says, are you really into rugby now? And he's like, he really hits the nail on the head. He says, everything is more fun when you're watching it in a group.
Yeah.
And yeah, that
really... Maurice had been reacting to not showing up, and as as you're more and more introduced, Jacob and our audience, to what Maurice is about, he really does value that individual friendship thing to extremes. And it's always nice when Ed produces some sage wisdom. And Barney, just to you said the way the scenes were set when Shelley comes out fully dressed as Vanna from Wheel of Fortune. I think right then, and that's fairly early in the viewing, we realize, there's going to be a problem here. But still, for the comedic effect,
yeah,
because who better than Shelley to dress up and oh man.
Yeah, and I think about the line where she's telling Holling, and nobody turns the letters like Vanna does, and Merv Griffin says this, and he owns hotels in Atlantic City, and I think about that line from time to time, just in my everyday life.
Good recall.
Yeah.
So, one of the questions that I think is still there, maybe we could uncover it a little bit more, is why was watching so much TV appealing to Shelley to begin with? What was it about her background that put her in this place that she wanted to immerse herself in all this content and all these stories and all of these shows and games? And like, why did she need that, or think that she needed that? What was deficient in her experience prior to that point that would make her so hungry to fill that hole with the stuff?
Barney, did you think it was at all out of character for her? And in a sense, Jacob's asking that as well. Do we have background for her entering season 2 that would for this behavior?
That really is a good question, because typically she comes across as very grounded, and and maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're right, in a way it doesn't really kind of fit one thing that I noticed, or just kind of put the pieces together, um, as we're talking, is a lot of the shows that we see on the TV or that she mentions are uh, like somehow international or foreign, in a foreign language. Like she says she wants to see that Puerto Rican soap opera. And then there's one time where they're watching Magnum PI that's dubbed in Japanese, and yeah, and and um and it harkens back to Pauline saying that it wants her to be able to experience the world. I wonder if he's worried about or kind of caring about her in this way, how she did. I think she was from Saskatchewan, which is I don't know how deeply they were thinking about this, but it is one of the less populated provinces in Canada, and she's so young when she arrives in Sicily. If he's worried that she's missing this part of development in her life or these experiences, since now she's kind of stuck in the bar. I wonder if that was where he was worried that she's not having the chance to see these other things, and experience these other things in her life, and hoping that maybe this can be a gift to her. But I wonder if in her case, kind of what caused it is, I don't know, maybe too much of a good thing, and having trouble being able to kind of put limits on it. We kind of see it tangibly through spending the money that she was spending, and then but interestingly, she feels guilty about the fact that she is lying about having a baby that she has to attend to, and putting the person on hold just so that she can watch more TV that she wants to watch. um and maybe there is a void that this TV is helping her to fill in a way. I don't know if it's related to kind of international life experiences, or if it's related to having the chance to see what else is happening around the world, especially in terms of things that would appeal to people her age, since most of the people in Sicily that we always see are older than her.
It seems like there are a few references to um, her childhood, and also to her um, kind of forgetting, her being so immersed by the watching of the TV that she forgets normal things in life that she enjoys. And so like she tells that story when she's with Chris, and she's gone to him for counsel, and almost looking to him as she would a religious leader or a priest. And she's kind of confessing her addiction to watching. And then he asks, was there a history in your family of addiction to watching television? And she says, well, her dad used to watch TV, and he would get really mean if he was interrupted. So there are these early childhood memories of her parent doing this. I mean, that she's probably even forgotten about, and then when asked, oh, it does come back up. And but it seemed to me, I think at one point she's being confronted about it, and she gives that argument that was the introduction piece. Well, it brings the whole world into the room, into the house. And I just had this feeling like maybe the whole reason she started it is she felt like she didn't have much life experience. And there's this whole thing about the honeymoon, and they didn't even go on a honeymoon. So she spends their money. She didn't get that adventure, and maybe she has this deficiency. And being immersed in these other stories makes her feel like she's experiencing international culture. But like you said earlier, she's sacrificing her own story and her own identity by being so immersed in the others that she's out of touch with things that she likes. And she's kind of living vicariously through these other shows. And so I kind of wondered if it's that psychological need to fill a hole that she's feeling, that maybe that feeling of like, I haven't done much in life I haven't had many adventures. I don't know much about international culture. Paralleling Joel's psychological need for affirmation by other people, if that's the common thread that that you have to kind of what could you remind us one more time about the title of the episode?
I think it's
Goodbye to all
all
that.
that. Mhm.
Goodbye to all that. So like, is the title a response to their, I mean, this is so subjective, right? There's so many ways to interpret it, but is the title a response to these crutches that that both Joel and Shelley are leaning on? Goodbye to all that. Like, you don't need that stuff. Be who you are. Like, find your grounding. You don't need the affirmation of other people to make you a viable human being. You don't need to watch a bunch of TV to feel like you've had life journeys. Like, just be who you are. Goodbye to all that other stuff. I don't know. That's where I kind of came out in the end. But since you both know the show a lot more, did you have a different reading or take or interpretation?
I think you've found a very viable common thread there. Yeah, to give up on those kinds of experiences and realize where you're sitting in life. And Shelley is very young, obviously, and even hasn't had what Joel has had. But yeah, I think you have hit it, Jacob. And the chuckles are never that far away. You know, when she's with Chris, that is so rich. You know, Shelley, keep in mind that you know, I got my cleric abilities from the back of a Rolling Stone ad, and then Shelley, being the good Catholic, says, "Can't you, you know, give me some Hail Marys or something to say?" And what did Chris say? Well, I know a couple of Buddhist chants if that'll help you feel better. Yeah. But Jacob, I really feel you're not very subjective there. I think if you were sitting with the writers, I think there'd be some nodding heads saying, "Oh, we're glad you got it."
Yeah, that's really a great point. And kind of teasing out that here are two characters that are doing unhealthy things to fill some need or to fill some kind of really big part of their lives. You know, Joel is relying on Elaine to define who he is and define part of his future, and Shelley is relying on the TV to show her what she's missing. You know, she's thinking, what am I missing in life being here in Alaska, you know, running a bar? And she's realizing, oh boy, you know, I hear all these things that she's missing, but her problem is that she can't put any, what, I don't want to say context, but she can't say, you know, here's all of these experiences that I'm missing, but how many of these experiences that I'm seeing are really experiences that I could have or want to have? So it's like a kid in a candy store seeing all of these things. I've got to have this, you know, I've got to have, you know, what are these people in Italy doing? What are these people in China doing? What are these, you know, what's it like to watch something, you know, an American show that's in Japanese, you know, how about these soap operas, you know, and the jewelry and all these things, and, you know, the telephone that's a hot dog and a chia pet and all of these things, you know, she can't put a limit on what she thinks that she's missing. And thankfully at the end, it helps her to see what is important in her life, and how to put, you know, this TV and the satellite dish, you know, within the limits that she can enjoy it, but not, you know, not overindulge, you know, to.
That reminds me, as you were talking there about this phrase that you hear sometimes, like kind of informal lingo, FOMO. Have you heard that? Fear of missing out. Um, and it's a real phenomenon. Um, Sometimes you hear stories like um, of tech gadgets, like somebody buys something because they're afraid they're going to miss out, and then they get it and then they kind of regret, like, why did I buy that? I didn't need that. I just didn't want to miss out. Or um, it's almost like Shelley has FOMO for like the entire collection of world cultures. Like she doesn't want to miss out on anything. She just wants to catch everything, and at all hours of the day. Um, I'm kind of wondering, I didn't think about it this way, but can you read that aspect of the story into Joel's experience? Is there a FOMO that he has? And if so, like what would that be? What is his fear of missing out?
Well, his ongoing fear through, as a thread through the series is this certainly isn't New York, and there's no Jewish people around me. And his lament is obvious then. Barney, did you get a take on this episode and what he might be missing out?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. When you said that, it reminded me of earlier when he said, if I were in New York, my life would be like this. And there's episodes later where he says, when I finally get to go back to New York, he's like, you better believe I'm going to charge what the market will bear. I'm going to make my money. I'm going to do this and this and this. And even in the letter that Elaine wrote, she itemized all the things that he wants to do. And I think that I was kind of misremembering from a different episode. I thought of our last episode where Holleen says, life is passing me by. I think that in this case too, Joel is fearing missing out on everything that everyone he knows or grew up with is doing in New York City, and that really keeps him for much. Like Ken said, much of the series, it keeps him from being really more engaged with the community, I think.
So that's like another important lesson maybe the episode presents, is like to be authentic with who you are, to not try to fill or build up your identity based on these other crutches, and to let go of this fear of missing out, but to recognize what's already in front of you, like the good things that are there. I'm kind of wondering about the role of community in times of crisis, like identity crisis, or I don't know if you'd call it mourning or loss. So Joel had Ed, and he also had, let me see here, he also had Maggie, and then Shelley had Holling, and I think, and Chris. And I think without the help of these friends, they might have come around, they might have gotten to that point, but it would have taken a whole lot longer. And so I don't know if there's something we want to say about the role of like genuine friends or family or people who come around us that help us recognize when we're out of sync or out of touch with who we really are, or we're pursuing some unhealthy way to resolve a problem that that is not going to get us where we need to go, and they're courageous enough or compassionate enough to step in and intervene. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, since you know the characters so well, if you feel that that's happening here, that they're really stepping in and helping, and the importance of that role.
Well, certainly the ending, and akin to an episode we had talked about where Shelley steps up with a puppet show for Holling. Holling's authenticity and the realization of the strength of their relationship was very evident in the end. As he's going to be supportive, but at the same time, he says, Shelley, you can be mean. And then a wonderful line for Shelley, I know Holling, but you tamed Jesse the bear. Beautiful. Yeah, the relationship just continues to be confirmed as we go along, and the strength and the love that they share is plainly evident. really enjoyable.
And I like how Shelley kind of alludes to Holling helping her with other things, kind of other parts in her life. And she's like, well, I forget if it's her who says it or if Holling who says it, that, she's like, you just give me the M&Ms just a few at a time, and that kind of helps her not, kind of keep her, it helps her to keep in check, kind of helps her to keep from overindulging.
Mm.
I like how in Shelley's case, even though Chris says, I just answered an ad in the back of Rolling Stone, it shows the role that clergy and religious support from someone who is religious really helps people. And we see other times that Shelley really needs and really misses her connection with her Catholic roots, how she grew up, and that just the way they staged that scene with her giving connection in the closet.
Oh.
And I love the times where Chris says, he means, well, tell me more about that, Shelley. And she's like, you're not supposed to say my name. I mean, not Shelley. And it's just the way that goes. And so, yeah, that shows the support from how, someone in the religious community is supporting her. And then back to, her kind of almost essential spouse, her partner is supporting her. And in Joel's case, we see Joel keeping people at a distance in general, but the one person that he always, kind of literally lets into his life is Ed. And, Ed is his kind of standard, tried and true friend throughout the episode. Of all the times where Joel is sharing his feelings and sharing his memories and recollections, it's usually with Ed. And we see here the value of this, having close friendship, someone you can rely on, and someone who, especially in Ed's case, who understands you, despite, who reads between the lines and understands what you're trying to get at, and goes that extra mile to bring other people in and help you to get over what you're struggling through.
Are there any other questions or thoughts that either of you would like to share before we close?
I was just kind of thinking back to what you said a little bit ago, Jacob, before we just discussed this most recent topic. Again, going back to the movie theater, and this episode showing us about crutches and how we try to maybe I don't know, fool ourselves or try to pretend that we're in control. And Joel is talking with his younger self, and Joel kind of blurts out, he says, well, I haven't had a chance. Life has been unfair to me, all of these bad things, I'm always getting the fuzzy end of the lollipop, and his younger self shoots him down right away, saying, you can't make these excuses. And we kind of see Shelley like thinking, well, all these things are happening around me. I can't miss out on all of these things. And I've got to see this show. What time is it? I've got to see this. I've got to see this. I've got to see this. And we have this TV, and if I don't watch it, I can't have these experiences. And I think maybe one other neat thing about the show is, about this episode, is kind of, again, like seeing these characters struggle through, saying goodbye to all that struggle, through, taking the next step, getting help, making it through their loss, their grief, or over this addiction. And again, the community helping them through that.
Yeah, and in both cases, the struggle is going to go on, and they write dialogue for that. Obviously, it's a television program, so next week has to take another path. But in Shelley and Holling's conversation, Shelley says, it's not going to be easy and I'm going to need help through this. Okay. Kind of an analogy to other addictions in this world. And although the words weren't spoken, Joel is a bright young lad and realizes that his struggle is going to continue and maybe in a different but big time way. So I enjoy that about the program, that it's not just la la and we're done and everything's fine.
That's well stated, Ken and Barney. Yeah, I find that helpful.
Yeah. The main charm, one of the wonderful things about the show is the characters and how they keep developing, and we see them, kind of being as genuine as you can make, TV characters over these the seasons. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's as always, I'm so happy to have the chance to discuss Northern Exposure with you guys, and to go back to have an excuse, not that I need one, but have an excuse to watch these episodes again. And it's wonderful. I've always watched these, against Ed's advice, I've always watched these by myself, and discussing them with you guys has really helped me to understand so much more about these episodes, and really the depth to them, thinking about what the title means, how the stories are connected. Things aren't happening in isolation, but there's some reason for these stories to be happening in this episode. And we want to say thank you to you all for watching along and listening along with us. And we hope that it makes you want to find some way to be able to experience these episodes yourself, get in touch with these characters, and for the shows that you like yourself, to think about them more deeply and see how they relate to the way that life is going, where you are in your life, and life going on around you. Not whatever, however old the show is that you might like, there's these connections, there's these lessons that we keep seeing repeated, and that we can apply to where we are even now. So for another episode of the Two World Podcast, special edition with our co-host Ken Naines and Jacob, we are so thankful for you guys joining us today, and we hope that you are as excited as we are for the next episode of whatever it may be, and we'll see you then.